Have you ever had a day where one symptom returned and suddenly you thought, what if I'm right back where I started? Maybe your unexplained fatigue came back or your anxiety spiked again. Maybe your stomach started acting up or your joints hurt. And within seconds, your mind started telling a whole story. It's happening again. All my progress is gone. Nothing is actually working. I know that feeling because I used to believe that all the time too. There's actually science that explains why our brains so quickly jump to those kind of conclusions. Today, I want to show you why. Welcome back to the Whole She Rises podcast. I'm Mandy Scovern. Last week, we talked about why your nervous system can keep your body in protection mode even long after life has become safer. Today, I want to talk about what happens next, because understanding that your body has been protecting you doesn't automatically make fear disappear, right? One of the hardest parts of healing is learning how to respond when your body has a bad day, because it's so easy to wonder, am I right back where I started? But what if that symptom doesn't mean that you're starting over at all? What if healing isn't about never having another symptom again, but learning to see your body differently when one does show up? This used to be what my entire life was like. There was a time when every symptom felt like an emergency, because after Guillain-Barré, I had learned something kind of terrifying. Sometimes the worst case scenario really does happen. So after that, every headache or strange sensation, every ache or wave of fatigue, it felt like something that I needed to figure out immediately. So I wasn't just noticing symptoms, I was investigating them, researching them, trying to solve them, preparing for what they might mean, because somewhere deep inside, I believed if I could just figure it out fast enough, maybe I could stay safe or prevent something. Looking back now, I wasn't being dramatic. I was just trying to protect myself. And maybe you've been doing the same thing, because I think so many women watching or listening today know exactly what this feels like. Maybe it wasn't Guillain-Barré for you. Maybe it was just years of chronic illness or infertility, maybe burnout or an unwanted divorce, maybe caring for a sick parent or losing someone you loved, maybe years of just feeling dismissed by doctors. Whatever taught your brain that life can change unexpectedly or that your body can't always be trusted, your nervous system remembers it. And that memory can shape the way you experience every symptom that comes after it. Here's what actually changed for me. And honestly, this might be one of the most freeing things I've learned in my entire healing journey. I still have symptoms sometimes. I don't want anyone listening today to believe healing becomes symptom-free forever, because that's not real life. Some days I'm still more tired than usual. Some days my stomach still feels off or my joints ache. Sometimes I don't sleep very well, and sometimes life is just really stressful. The difference isn't that my body never speaks to me anymore. The difference is that I no longer assume every symptom means catastrophe. That changed everything, because I realized the symptom was just one piece of the information. The fear-filled story my brain was attaching to that symptom was something entirely different. And once I learned to separate those things, I stopped feeling like every difficult day meant that I was losing my progress. Can I tell you what I think is actually happening? Because I don't think most of us are reacting to today's symptoms alone. I think we're reacting with yesterday's fear. Think about it. Maybe you wake up one morning and your hands feel stiff again, or the fatigue you thought had finally lifted suddenly returns. And at first, it's simply a sensation. That's all, just a feeling. But within seconds, it becomes a story. Here we go again. What did I do wrong? Was all that progress temporary? What if this becomes as bad as it was before? And maybe before you've even gotten out of bed, you're no longer responding to today's stiffness. You're responding to every frightening possibility your mind has attached to it. I remember that being the hardest part for me. The symptom itself was already difficult enough, but the fear of what it might mean was often way harder. Every symptom sent me spiraling. I worried that I would always feel this way, that I would never have a good quality of life again, that it would affect everyone I loved or I would lose my job. I really felt like I was going to become a burden. Looking back, I can see something now that I couldn't see then. I wasn't just afraid of today's symptom. I was so afraid of my future. Here's something that fascinated me. There's actually a scientific word for what we've been talking about today. I'm going to nerd out just a little bit. It's called interoception. It's a sciencey word that's describing something really simple. Interoception is the way your brain notices, interprets, and gives meaning to what's happening inside your body. So your heartbeat, your breathing, pain, fatigue, tension, nausea. Your brain is constantly asking this question: what does this sensation mean? And here's what completely changed the way I saw my own body. Your brain doesn't answer that question using only what's happening today. It also uses everything it has learned from your past. So your previous experiences, your fears, your memories, the seasons that hurt you, the things your body has already survived. So suddenly, so much of my life started making so much more sense because after Guillain-Barré syndrome, my brain had learned that unusual sensations could actually be dangerous. So of course it noticed everything. It wasn't trying to ruin my life, it was trying to protect me. And honestly, that realization brought me so much more compassion for myself and for my body. Maybe your nervous system learned something different. Maybe years of chronic illness taught it to stay on high alert. Maybe years of being dismissed by doctors taught it, if I don't figure this out myself, no one will. Maybe a difficult marriage or burnout or infertility or years of caregiving taught your brain that life can change overnight. Whatever your story is, your brain has been learning from it, and it's trying to help, even if it isn't always helping the way you need anymore. What was very helpful to your survival in one season may actually be what's keeping you stuck now. But this is where the story changes. One of the biggest gifts that neuroscience gave me wasn't teaching me how to never have another symptom. It taught me how to stop letting every symptom become my identity or my future or proof that healing wasn't working. Because here's what I finally understood. My body noticed a sensation. My brain supplied a story. Those are not the same thing. And I could change the story. Imagine this. You're driving home one afternoon and you see one orange construction cone sitting beside the road. If you've driven that road before, and one construction cone once meant an hour-long traffic jam, your brain might immediately say, oh great, here we go again. This drive is going to be awful. Sometimes it may be right, but sometimes just one construction cone doesn't mean anything else is happening. Traffic is flowing normally. Your brain simply filled the rest of the story in before you had enough information. And that's exactly what our nervous system often does. One symptom becomes an entire prediction, not because we're irrational or dramatic, not because we're weak, because our brains are designed to recognize patterns and protect us from danger. The problem is, sometimes they're using an old map to navigate today's road. Researchers have actually studied this too, and they even have a name for it. It's called catastrophizing. I don't love that word because it sounds like someone is just maybe being dramatic, but that's not what researchers meant at all when they gave it that name. What they're describing is what happens when our brain learns to immediately jump from a symptom to worst case scenario, not because we're making it up or because symptoms are imaginary, but because our brain genuinely believes it's helping us prepare. When I finally learned that, I cried because for years I thought something was wrong with me. I thought I was just overly anxious or too emotional or too sensitive. Instead, I learned my brain had simply become incredibly good at trying to keep me safe. It just needed to learn that it didn't have to sound the alarm every single time I had a symptom anymore. And that might be the most hopeful part of all, because if your brain can learn fear, it can also learn safety. If it learned to rehearse worst case scenarios, it can learn new responses too. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it happens one moment, one pause, one compassionate response at a time. And I can honestly tell you, this is where I notice one of the biggest differences in my own life today. I still notice symptoms, I still listen to my body, but I no longer immediately begin researching or looking for another specialist or assuming that I'm going backwards. Now I just notice. I pause. I ask myself what my body might actually need today. Maybe it's going outside for a slow walk or some rest. Maybe it's some quiet time with the Lord instead of scrolling. Or maybe I've simply been carrying too much lately. The symptom is no longer a verdict, it's simply information. And honestly, that has given me so much more peace than becoming completely symptom free ever could. So, what does healing actually look like? Because I think this is where so many of us have the wrong picture. For years, I believed healing meant I would eventually reach a place where I didn't have symptoms anymore. But that's not what healing has looked like for me. Healing didn't teach me how to never have another hard day. Healing taught me how to have a hard day without believing my entire life was falling apart. That's a very different kind of healing. I still have days when I'm tired, or days that my stomach feels off, or my joints remind me that they're still there. Days when life is simply more stressful than usual. The difference isn't that my body stopped talking. The difference is I stopped assuming every message meant disaster. Healing isn't learning to stop listening to your body. It's learning to listen without immediately assuming the worst. Sometimes symptoms really are telling us something important. Maybe you are getting sick or you've overextended yourself. Maybe your hormones are shifting. Maybe you're genuinely experiencing a flare. Maybe it's something your healthcare provider needs to evaluate. Learning not to spiral doesn't mean ignoring your body. It means responding with wisdom and compassion instead of fear. As I was thinking about this episode, I kept asking myself, what is something I can actually remember when my brain starts spiraling or telling me a story of fear? Because let's be honest, when we're scared, we're not going to remember an entire 30-minute podcast episode. We need something quick and simple. So I want to leave you with something I practice myself. I call it PACT, because today you can make a pact with yourself, a pact that the next time a symptom shows up, you'll try to respond differently than you used to. So the first letter, P, is for pause. Before allowing one symptom to become a prediction about your future, pause. Take a breath. Remind yourself, I don't know the whole story yet. The second letter, A, is for actual. Ask yourself, what is actually true here? Maybe it's my joints hurt today. I'm unusually tired, or my stomach feels unsettled. Notice how different that is from saying I'm falling apart again. Nothing worked. I'll always feel this way. One is an observation. The other is a prediction, and those are not the same thing. The third letter, C, is for check the whole picture. What else could be contributing to this symptom today? How have I been sleeping? Have I eaten enough? Have I been drinking enough water? Have I been under more stress lately? Have I been traveling, or have I been pushing myself too hard? Is this something new, or is it something familiar? Is this something I should discuss with my healthcare provider? Give yourself permission to gather information before you jump to a conclusion. And finally, T is for today. Respond to today's reality, not tomorrow's fears or yesterday's stories. Ask yourself, what does my body need today? Maybe nourishment or movement, rest or prayer, maybe boundaries or patience. You don't have to solve the rest of your life from one difficult afternoon. And I want to say this: a new, severe, rapidly worsening, or persistent symptom deserves appropriate medical evaluation. Learning not to spiral is not the same thing as neglecting your health. It's learning to care for yourself from a place of wisdom instead of panic. When I first started my healing journey, I thought success would look like never having symptoms again. Today, I define healing very differently. Healing didn't give me a perfect body. It gave me a different relationship with my body. It gave me the ability to notice without immediately panicking, to listen without immediately catastrophizing, to care for myself without believing I had failed. And honestly, that has changed my life more than becoming symptom-free ever could. Because healing isn't measured only by whether another symptom ever returns. Sometimes it's measured by how quickly you recognize what's happening, how compassionately you respond, how wisely you seek help when it's needed, and how much less of your life that fear is allowed to steal. And that's really what I hope you'll remember most from today. Not that your body will never have another hard day, but that one difficult day doesn't erase months or years of healing. Your body is not asking you to panic or find all the possible answers right away. It's just asking you to pay attention with wisdom and with compassion and with hope. If today's conversation encouraged you, I think you'll really enjoy last week's episode where we talked about why your nervous system can stay stuck in protection mode, maybe long after life has become safer. I'll link it right here. Until next time, keep connecting the dots and keep becoming the whole woman God created you to be. I'll see you here next week.